Okay, so we are live on Facebook uh, my name's Renee, and I work for Girl Scout Spirit of Nebraska. And today we are going to be talking about uh, the United Nations, the Commission on the Status of Women, Sustainable Development Goals, all kinds of other really high-level stuff. And the reason we're talking about this is because back in March, Girl Scouts Spirit of Nebraska was supposed to send 4 girls to the United Nations. And so the event was called the Commission on the Status of Women, and every year this event happens, and women and girls from all over the planet come together and they talk about how they can achieve gender equality and work together. And it's a time of learning about women and girls around the world and the situations they're dealing with. And so back in August, August through December, we selected a team, some really amazing and talented girls from Nebraska, and then spent months and months preparing, reading college-level material, learning about the United Nations, about lots of other really interesting topics about girls and women's rights. And then, of course, our trip was canceled because of the coronavirus. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we're doing instead of traveling to the United Nations. But that's kind of the story of some of these girls that you're going to hear from today, some of the things they learned, what they think is important, and then the work that they're doing and other girls from the 3 other councils that we were going to travel with, what they're doing to kind of continue the learning and continue to raise awareness and continue to teach about gender equality. So a little bit about the Commission of the Status on Women, and then we're going to hear from Journey, Emma, and Leota. And they're going to teach some of the things that they've learned in the past 5 months or so. But the Commission of the Status on Women, Commission on the Status of Women, happens 2 weeks out of every year, and there are UN high-level meetings where the Secretary General is there, and it's all in the UN compound. And then there's also parallel events that nonprofits and NGOs from around the world put together, thousands and thousands of people and hundreds of organizations, and they teach about girls' rights and women's rights in their countries. So it's a very busy time of both learning and teaching. And I guess I'm not going to say too much else because Journey is going to talk about some statements and some other work that we're doing going forward. But it's a really fantastic opportunity that we unfortunately were not able to go to. I think a lot of people can relate to that sense of disappointment and lost opportunity. But let's start off with Emma. And Emma is going to talk to us about the Sustainable Development Goals, what they are, and why they're important, and share with us the one that she thinks is important. So, Emma, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, hi.
I'll pull up the Sustainable Development Goals screen here.
Okay, let me just say, if you hear background noise, I'm sorry, my brother's in his band class and he's playing his baritone, so there might be a slight background noise. But so basically the SDGs, it stands for an acronym of Sustainable Development Goals, and they were created by the United Nations. There's 17 in all, as you can see on the picture. And they're part of the 2030 agenda set by the UN, which is their attainable goals set that they want to reach by 2030 to better the planet and society. And one that we've worked with the most through CSW is the 5th goal of gender equality. We're focusing on women's rights and girls' rights, especially for CSW. So that's the one we've worked with the most. And then the SDG that I think is the most important well, one that I value a lot is the climate action, which is the 13th one. And I'm an advocate for climate change at my school through environmental clubs like Science Club. And I think it's important to focus on issues with the planet for future generations and cleaning up the planet too. So that's basically what the SDGs are.
Okay. Um, Journey and Leota, do you want to share your SDGs that you kind of have a passion for? Journey, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So the SDG that is really important to me is number 3, which is good health and well-being. And for more than one reason, the first being that like a huge chunk of number 3 is reproductive, maternal, and newborn health, which I'm really passionate about. I want to go to college to become an OBGYN, so it pains me in a way that's like indescribable. That there's like really high complication risks with pregnancy and childbirth, in other countries that are preventable, and they just like don't have enough resources to um, make these make them better childbirths. And the other reason is that it talks about mental health and making sure that everyone has access to help if they need it. So, therapy or medication, which I think is really important to everyone, especially right now that we're like stuck at home and you can't really talk to your friends, because I know that that is one way that a lot of people cope with their mental illnesses. So, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Leota, what about you? What is one SDG that you are passionate about?
Um, I care a lot about environmental stuff, so a lot of the ones in that area I care about, but I'd say the one I care the most about would probably be number 4, or quality education. Um, I have been blessed to be able to have a really good education, and I've seen how that benefits me and has made so many things possible that just couldn't have been. And I think that a lot of the inequalities and other injustices that people face come in part from a difference in what education was offered to them and how it was offered to them, and through education, what role models they were able to connect with. So I think improving education is really, really important to improving the world as a whole.
Great, thank you, girls, for sharing that. Um, there's 17 goals, so there's one for everybody. So next, we're going to have Leota. Leota's going to talk about the Beijing Platform for Action, and what is that, and why did we learn about it, and why is it important?
All right. So the Beijing Platform for Action was the overall theme of this year's CSW event. It is a roadmap, or kind of like a plan, just like it sounds like, of how to reach gender equality. So it lays out what the main problems are, what steps countries and organizations and individuals should take to try and combat those problems very efficiently. One of the great things about the Beijing platform is when you look at it, it hits so many things that you just wouldn't normally think about. And so reading it lets people understand the different types of inequalities that you don't normally think about just because they're not forefront. And then it has sections throughout that are really helpful in going, oh, that's a big thing. One of the really cool things for Girl Scouts specifically about the Beijing platform was it was the first time that the UN ever specifically said we need to think about girls specifically, not just women and not just children, but specifically what troubles there are for girls. And so that is one of the coolest parts about this document for those of us in the Scouts.
Yeah, and I didn't know much about the Beijing Platform for Action before I started on this journey either, and that was interesting to me. I'm so glad you brought that up. This was the first time that girls' rights were mentioned in an international legal document, and that was 1995. So that was 25 years ago, and obviously we've come a long ways, but have a long ways to go. So what was it like reading? Like, did you find reading I mean, it was a book essentially. How did that go?
Yeah.
Was that difficult or easy or interesting? How was it going for you when you read it?
It was definitely a tough read. It's a lot of words, and you got to take your time and spend a couple days. You can't just sit down and read a chapter. But if you read it right and really take the time to think about it, it's really interesting. So you want to go back and read more, but it does take a little bit to get past that initial, this is a lot of words. But then you start noticing, oh wow, I never thought of that, and my gosh, there's that too. And it gets really cool, but it does take a bit to get into.
Yeah. Um, and it's available for everybody to read. So the Beijing Platform for Action, anybody can just Google that, and there's free versions online if you'd like to read. Section L is the section that refers to the girl child. So if you want a place to start, you can just start with Section L and read through that and kind of learn about girls and women's rights, or girls' rights specifically, as opposed to women's rights, 'cause they are different. All right, last, we're going to have Journey. She's going to talk a little bit about what these girls are working on now. So Spirit of Nebraska was one of 4 councils that was chosen to go to the United Nations. So there's 3 other councils that we're working together with. And she's going to talk about some of the work that we're doing going forward, a couple other things. So go ahead, Journey.
Well, so in preparation for the commission on the status of women, we absorbed so much information in such a short amount of time. We had 6 webinars. The first one was in December, and that was just basically to get to know everyone and to kind of introduce what CSW was. And then we needed to read the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action over our Christmas break and be ready for the second webinar in January. And then, so every other week we had four total. So we had one every 2 weeks, and just to share more information, and we had homework to read, and overall it was about 675 pages of the tough stuff to read. All of it was very difficult. All of it is just pretty much facts, and it was really difficult. So we read various topics like reports on like the Me Too movement, feminist politic changes, and emerging issues in gender equality. And we read a whole bunch of United Nations statements and regional reports, and just a whole bunch of stuff. All to prepare us for CSW, which got canceled, which is really sad. But that doesn't mean that we've stopped, working. All of us girls were working in 4 groups to create statements to inform the world on topics about girls. So we have women in education, women in STEM, ending all violence against women, and women in leadership. So each of us are in a group. Some of us are in multiple groups, and we've been working with the other CSW girls around the nation to just bring awareness to these topics and to share facts and stories through these statements that we're building. And then eventually you guys will get to read them, and they should be very, very powerful.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Journey. And yeah, we have the girls are working on both blogs, and then also I don't know, just kind of like a statement, like more official statements, I think. Is that right? So they're working on a lot of different kinds of writings. And this stuff will go out from the councils. So like our council will release a lot of that writing. And then also GSUSA is supposed to share a lot of this stuff on their social media as well. So that will be exciting and important to hear these writings from the girls on these particular topics. And I'm excited for these projects to continue to move forward. So that's about all we have today for you. If you're interested in learning more, there's lots of information online. You can reach out to our Facebook page or to me, and be happy to answer, or the girls, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer your questions too, about Commission on the Status of Women and everything they learned at the United Nations. But thank you all for watching.